Hi folks, I hope this discussion on immigration has been a real eye-opener for you. And even though we covered some of these ways or paths that people come to our country, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't cover the rest of the ways to receive a green card. We've already looked at the overall number of green cards granted each year, each one representing a person that our government has welcomed to our country to permanently live here. And it's a big number. About 50 million people since 1960. And we've already looked at how it doesn't change by political party either. We've seen that our government has steadily increased the amount of legal immigration into our country. And this number has routinely exceeded 1 million people a year for decades now. This million-plus number is a combination of people arriving in our country in that year that immediately receive a green card, as well as people that are here already and request and receive a change of status to permanent residency. For example, if someone came here in 2024 on a work visa or as a refugee, then they applied for a green card and received it in 2025, they would count towards the 2025 immigration number as a change of status because they were already in our country under a different status at the beginning of the year. Bottom line, 1 million foreign-born people have to average coming here every year to issue 1 million people new lawful permanent resident status each year. In 2023, there were 1.17 million people granted lawful permanent residence. To help put that in perspective, that's the equivalent of adding the population of the cities of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Syracuse, New York, Lexington, Kentucky, Richmond, Virginia, in Des Moines, Iowa, to our country all in 1 year. And we've done this almost every year for the last 30 years. It's insane. So let's take a look at the paths that these million-plus people are able to take every year to receive permanent resident status. Now, one way, employment-based preferences. 197,000 people were granted permanent resident status in 2023 for employment-based reasons. 185,000 of those because our government believed they possessed a skill or degree helpful to our country, and another 12,000 in the employment creation category because these individuals had investment plans to create jobs here. Just to be clear, these 197,000 people are in addition to the 5 million people here on non-immigrant work visas that we discussed in part 3. Although a percentage of these 197,000 usually come from the work visa pool via a change of status. But these 197,000 people don't receive visas, which are good for 6 years. They receive a green card to stay permanently. Now, another path that people take, diversity immigration. Yes, you probably could have guessed this already. Our government even has a diversity program for immigrants. It isn't enough that every country in the world can come here already. If our government believes certain countries are underrepresented in our country, they grant special invitations and immigration spots to these countries to increase their population here. 67,000 people came here as diversity immigrants in 2023. The breakdown by country wasn't available for 2023. Nepal, Morocco, Algeria, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan led the way though in 2022. But it wasn't by much, and oddly there seems to be some amount of diversity immigration from almost every country in the world. So this category may be being used for other reasons. The 2 other pastoral green card are ways that we discussed already. These ways are as refugees or asylum seekers. Being here as a refugee or an asylum seeker doesn't get you counted among the 1 million new immigrants each year. You have to receive lawful permanent resident status to be counted. When it comes to these 2 paths, it's amazing how many people are getting persecuted the world over. It's odd. The media never seems to cover these persecutions, unless it's about Iran or North Korea, Israel, Russia, Ukraine, or lately Venezuela. The media has decided it's not news you need to know about. But according to our asylum and refugee numbers, our government believes there's persecution going on everywhere in the world. And even though we have troops in almost every country in the world, our government doesn't seem interested in trying to stop this persecution. But it is interested in relocating all these victims to our country. In 2023, we granted lawful permanent resident status to 60,000 refugees and then also to another 54,000 asylum seekers. So we added 114,000 new permanent residents to our country from these groups just in 2023. Now, the history of these programs, finding good refugee data prior to 1980 is difficult. But this is how many refugees have received lawful permanent resident status since 1980. Almost 3 million people. And believe it or not, the trend's actually going down. But before you breathe a sigh of relief, let's look at the asylum data. This data starts in 1990, likely because this used to be such a rare event. But according to our government, this is how many people have been granted asylum each year since 1990. Almost 1 million people. And although the numbers are all over the place, the trend is unmistakable. It keeps going up. And don't forget, these are only the people that have had their asylum hearing and were granted asylum and given resident status, not the millions of asylum seekers here that are waiting for their case to be heard. In 2019, the government started to report the number of people that have filed for asylum in their yearly report. But I found some data in some other reports back to 2016. So here's the number of people who have filed for asylum in the years between 2016 to 2023. 3.29 million people have filed for asylum. And as you can see, this number just keeps going up. And who knows how many more came in during 2024 or so far this year. The number of people coming each year about doubled during Trump's first term, then tripled under Biden. I included the number of people actually granted asylum each year in purple in this graph. It's so small, I added a yellow arrow to help you see them. Only 272,000 people were granted asylum and a green card over the last 7 years. Now, the missing 3 million people between those seeking asylum and those that received asylum doesn't mean that the others were denied. It only means this massive increase in those seeking asylums overrun the system. And the majority of these 3 million asylum seekers are here in our country waiting for their asylum cases to be heard. It may be years before these cases are heard, let alone the cases for all the new ones that are still coming every day. And in case you forgot, you're paid for all the administrative and court costs for these hearings. You're also paid for most of their living expenses while they wait for that hearing. And when some of these cases are heard, years after these people have been here, what are the odds that their request will be denied? Probably pretty low. Now, there are also other paths that people take to receive lawful permanent residence. Through these various paths, we received 54,000 new residents in 2023. Now, about 80% of these immigrants fit into two categories. The first path being a victim of a crime. It's not clear what country this crime has to take place in, or even why being a victim of a crime anywhere entitles you to permanent resident status in our country. I'm trusting there's some relevance here, but who knows? But our government thinks there is. They granted 20,500 people resident status under the crime victim path in 2023. Now, second, individuals from foreign countries that worked for the U.S. government during one of our endless war for profit schemes are granted permanent resident status after our illegal occupation ends. Now, recently, most of these new residents were from Iraq and Afghanistan. 26,000 people were given the right to permanently live here in 2023 for this reason. Now, unlike the crime victim path, the reason for this path is pretty clear. These are often people that have betrayed their families and their countries and collaborated with an invading foreign government. And after our illegal occupation ends, these collaborators are often tried for treason and jailed or put to death. To avoid that, our government grants them resident status in our country to protect them, kind of like a witness protection program. These two groups make up 47,000 of the 54,000 people in this group. And the remaining 7,200 people gain residency through various other paths that are just too numerous to cover here. So these ways explain how 414,000 immigrants got here. But we're still a far way off from 1.17 million. So what about the other 750,000 people that received a green card? How did they get here? Family preference immigration, or more commonly called family reunification. If an individual receives a green card for one of the above reasons, that individual gets preference to bring everyone else in their family here in the following years. And I mean everyone else in their family. Spouses, children, sons, daughters-in-laws, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, maybe even their cousins, uncles, brothers, who knows? That's how we get 750,000 extra immigrants in 2023, in addition to the people already granted permanent resident status. If you remember in part 1, the people granted asylum can also bring family members here under the path of derivative asylum. And family reunification allows every other person granted a green card the ability to bring their family members as well. These people round out to the 1.7 million people that were legalized here in 2023. And while any individual category may go up or down in a given year due to political expedience or normal fluctuations, the overall trend is unmistakable. Between all these groups, you're going to get 1 million plus legal immigrants into our country each year. And now upwards of 5 million foreign visa workers and their families here each year. Whether you like it or not, whether you can afford it or not, whether you have a job or not. And take note, the state of the economy or the unemployment rate makes little difference. Our government ensures that the people keep coming regardless of your well-being. And where do these 1.17 million people come from? They come from almost every country in the world. But here are the top 10 countries with the highest amounts of immigrants in 2023. These 10 countries made up over half the immigrants that we received. Mexico, Cuba, India, Dominican Republic, China, Philippines, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Brazil, and El Salvador. Now I hope this one detail didn't escape you. During 2020 and 2021, we were locked down due to COVID. Yet our government granted lawful permanent resident status to over 1.4 million immigrants in those COVID years. 900,000 people were already here and had an adjustment to status. Now how could this make sense? Our economy was imploding. Jobs were scarce. Debt and welfare was exploding. Your life hung in the balance. But our government thought it was a good time to grant those 1 million people permanent resident status. Crazy. But even more crazy and at a great danger to your health, our government also admitted 500,000 people into our country during the COVID pandemic. It was too dangerous for you to travel 5 miles to work during COVID. But it wasn't too dangerous for 500,000 people to travel thousands of miles across the world to our country in the middle of a worldwide pandemic to receive a green card. Now tell me, how does that make sense? It doesn't. And it sure didn't help to stop the spread. Now in the first 4 parts of Article 15, we've taken a pretty deep dive into our government's immigration plan. We've covered the ways that people can come to our country, and also the incredible numbers of people that have come to our country since 1960. But next time we're going to talk about how this immigration plan affects you. Does this plan help you, like the government and the media tells you it does? Or do the consequences of this plan hurt you and your family? And if most of these consequences are negative, why does our government continue on with this plan anyways? Well, they have their reasons. And next time we'll talk about some of their reasons. We'll also talk about what they're trying so hard to hide from you that they're willing to bring over 1 million people a year here to keep it from you. I'll see you next time.